I am all about improving the safety of riding on a motorcycle, and usually that means increasing visibility. Drivers are more distracted today than they've ever been, so anything you can do to increase your visibility to oncoming traffic or traffic coming up from behind is a good thing. It makes you more visible and it makes riding safer. Well, today I'm going to talk about these new front-facing LED with sequential turn signals from PathfinderLED. Now, I've had these on my motorcycle for several years, but what's really exciting is PathfinderLED has recently improved these lights. They are now brighter than they were previously, and they also come in two different lens versions, a clear lens and a smoke lens. And in today's video, I'm going to show you how I installed these on my 2024 Honda Goldwing. So if you have a 2018 or later Honda Goldwing or Goldwing Tour, these lights will work for you, and they will definitely help to increase your visibility when riding your motorcycle. So let's get started.
This video is sponsored by PathfinderLED.
We're going to begin by removing the rear view mirror. I'm going to show you how to do this on the left side of the motorcycle. The procedure is exactly the same for the right side. On the underside of the mirror, you'll notice this single 5mm socket bolt, and that holds this black plastic trim piece in place. On my motorcycle, I also have the Honda air deflectors installed, and that has two other holes, but you don't need to be concerned about those. Just this one single 5mm bolt is all you'll need to remove. Now you can rotate the rear view mirror toward the back of the bike as I'm doing here, and then you can easily unclip this little cover. It slips right off. There's just a couple of clips that hold it into place. The rear view mirror housing assembly is held in place with these two 8mm bolts. So I'm going to use an 8mm socket to remove these. Take your time when removing these. You want to make sure you don't drop one of these bolts down into the open area of the shelter. I also like to keep my body pressed up against the outside edge of the rear view mirror, just to kind of hold it up in place so it doesn't just fall off when I remove that second bolt. So once again, be very careful that you don't drop one of these bolts down into the shelter. Once that second bolt is removed, there's nothing holding the rear view mirror onto the bike, so you have to keep your body kind of pressed up against it to hold it in place, and then you can very carefully remove it. Now you'll notice I have some blind spot monitor lights installed. If you don't have those, you don't have to worry about it. That just kind of hangs off. I've also got an additional wire attached to the bike for my Muth signal mirrors. So if you don't have those installed, you won't have that extra wire. So if you have a stock Goldwing, this will be the only connector you'll need to be concerned with. This is the connector for the front turn signals. And you'll notice this connector, there's a very small tab right here that I'm pointing to. And that tab has to be lifted upward so that we can separate the two halves of this electrical connector. So I'm just going to use my thumbnail to hold that tab up while pulling outward on that connector. Now you can't really see it in this shot, but I'm holding the rearview mirror between my arm and my body. That's what's keeping it from falling off to the ground. But once you've disconnected that connector, the rear view mirror housing assembly simply comes off. So you'll notice I've laid down this towel, and that's to basically protect the paint of the rear view mirror. We don't want it to get scratched. So what we're going to do now is we're going to disassemble this rear view mirror assembly, because that's where these front turn signals are located. Now you can notice these are the daytime running light turn signals I currently have installed. These have the clear lenses. The ones I'm installing today have the new smoke lens design. It's a subtle difference, but you can see there is a difference in the color of the lens. I just think this looks really cool. You can still get these in both clear and smoke from PathfinderLED. I should also point out that the newest version from PathfinderLED are now brighter than the previous models that I have installed. So you'll notice an even brighter daytime running light and a brighter sequential turn signal. Let's get this disassembled. It's not as hard as you might think. There's a few parts involved here, but it actually probably take you about 15 minutes, 10 or 15 minutes to do this job. So the first step in disassembly is to remove the rear view mirror. Now I will point out I have a Muth signal mirror, so there are some wires attached to this mirror that you won't have on your bike unless you have these Muth mirrors installed. So it will look a little bit different, but the installation and the removal is exactly the same as it is for the OEM mirrors that come on your Honda Goldwing. The way we remove these is we kind of push this mirror up from the bottom. And there are a couple of little clips down here that the mirror snaps into, and then up on the top there's like a little rod that some hooks fit in. I'll show you once we get this off. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to put the mirror housing on the top, and we're just going to kind of firmly press and push this mirror off. You'll hear a click like that. Now it's off. Now to get the mirror to completely release, we have to kind of rotate the base. This base rotates so that you can adjust your mirror angle, and we're going to rotate that base back to where it's a little bit more flat. I'm doing it by lifting up on the top of the mirror hard without pressing down this way, because I don't want to reattach those clips. So if I just put pressure right here on the top of the mirror, I can kind of flatten that out. Okay, now it's out. So let me give you a little bit closer look at what I was talking about. Once again, these are Muth signal mirrors, so they have wires going to the turn signals. You won't have that on the OEM mirrors. This mirror will just simply come off. But the installation and the way they fit on the bike are exactly the same as the stock mirrors. You may notice that down on the bottom of this mirror, on the back side, you've got these little plastic clips. And these two clips snap in to these little bars down here on the mirror housing itself. And then at the top of the mirror, you've got these two plastic, I call them hooks, these two little plastic hooks, and those slip up under these two bars on top. Our next task is to remove this matte black bezel from the painted surface of the mirror housing. You can see there's a little line here, and that's because this little matte black, flat black bezel comes away from the housing. Now to do that, we have to remove these two Phillips screws. I, of course, use a JIS screwdriver right here, the one from Vessel. It is a JIS, looks exactly like a Phillips screwdriver, but there is a slight difference. You can use a Phillips screwdriver to do this as well. There's also a little push pin rivet back here on this section. Not sure if you can see it. It's hard to see all this black on black, but there's a little push pin rivet right here, right next to where the mounting bracket is on the bike. And we're going to release that by pushing in on the center. Now, this head of this rivet is a little bit recessed inside the plastic. It's hard to get your fingernail up under there to get it out. You might have to use a pick, which I'm going to do. Okay, always want to be careful not to scratch this painted plastic. So I'm not going to try to get the pick underneath the head of the rivet. I'm going to go right into the center of the rivet and just kind of pop it out like this, and it will grab it enough and release it enough to where I can get my fingernail under there and pull it out the rest of the way. Now what we need to do is reset this plastic rivet so that when we go to reinstall, it will be ready. And you do that just by pushing up on this bottom post right here until the head comes out, or until that post comes out from the head like that. And now it's ready to be reinstalled when we reassemble the mirror housing. Next, we're going to remove these two screws. And these are self-tapping screws that are going into plastic on this mirror housing. You can see what the screw looks like there. And I'm going to set these way off to the side because I don't want to run the risk. You never want to leave a screw or a bolt laying around the area that you're working, because you might accidentally drag this mirror housing over one of those screws or bolts and scratch your paint. So you always want to set your hardware off to the side, way out of the way. And there's the second screw. Now we can separate this bezel from the mirror housing, but know that there are some little plastic clips that still hold this into place to kind of keep it aligned with the mirror. So you're going to hear a few little pops as you remove this, but there's nothing else holding it in. See, I'm pulling up from here, pulling straight out. You hear that little snap? That's just a clip up here that's holding this in place. I can now remove my Muth signal mirror because this is where the connector is underneath there. And that's what our bezel looks like after it's been removed. Now inside this mirror housing, to get to this light, we have to now remove the frame from this painted portion. And to do that, there are two additional screws. You'll see them down here and here. And we're going to remove those as well. Now these screws are larger than the two we removed earlier. Now we can separate and take the frame away from this plastic housing. You can see here, now I've still got some wires attached here, so you can see the difference in the size of those screws. These are the last two we removed. These are the first two we removed here. And you can see these are smaller. These are what hold that matte black bezel in place. And these are the ones that hold the frame inside the housing. So you don't want to get these confused. Make sure you remember which ones go in where. So if we look on the frame, you'll see this little cable tie holding these cables in place. And we can remove that basically by squeezing in these little fingers on each side. I'm going to use a pair of needle nose pliers. You could also push one side in with a screwdriver. I've done it both ways. Needle nose are a little easier, and then you just push this down and it will release that wire holder. So I'm going to squeeze these fingers in like that. It pulls through from the other side just like that. Okay, so now our wires are free. Now there's one more screw that has to be removed, and it's the screw that's holding this turn signal in place. And it's right here. It's the same size as the two we just removed, but you can see it down here on the bottom. So now we can just lift the light out of the housing. You'll notice that the wire goes through this little slot in the mirror housing, but we can pull that through and remove. This would be what your original turn signal would look like, except I have the Pathfinder turn signal, but it works the same way with your OEM turn signal. So now we've removed this, we can now install our new, in my case, these smoke colored lights. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, do me a favor and click that little thumbs up like button down below. That really does help my YouTube rankings. It's much appreciated. And now let's get back to the show. Now that you've got everything out, this is what the rear view mirror turn signal housing looks like when it's completely disassembled. Now, one thing I will recommend, since you've got it all apart, go ahead and clean it thoroughly, because the way, for some reason, Honda designed these, bugs and junk can get in this area in between the light fixture and the housing, and it can be kind of hard to clean unless you use something like a toothbrush. So while you've got it apart, go ahead and clean it really good. I've already cleaned mine. And this is our new smoke colored light. And basically, it's just going to sit right in. Now, they'll only go in one way, so don't worry about getting the right light in the left housing. They will only go in one direction. And we're just going to drop it in like that. And that's what it's going to look like once it's all installed. So we're going to replace that screw that we just removed. That's one of the larger self-tapping screws. And now is a good time for me to remind you that since you're screwing these screws into a plastic housing, you do not want to use an automatic or electric screwdriver or a drill. You want to always tighten these by hand, and there is no need to over-tighten them. Once you feel resistance, that's all you need. They do not have to be super tight, because you don't want to run the risk of stripping out the plastic, and then you've got to do a bunch of repair work to get it to work again. So hand tighten, and as soon as you feel it come to the end, stop. So now we're ready to fish our wire here, this connector, in through that slot. So now we're ready to reinstall our frame back into the housing. And I have these Muth mirror wires to deal with. You won't have that to deal with. And basically this just lays right in like that. You'll see it lines up with the two holes in the mirror housing. Reinstall the larger of the screws that are remaining. Once I feel some resistance, I'm going to stop. I'm not going to keep, it does not have to be super tight. Okay, now we're ready to reinstall our bezel. Now, the one thing you do have to remember when reinstalling the bezel is there is this little plastic tab right here on the end next to where the frame mounts to the bike, or the mirror frame mounts to the bike. This little tab that has a hole in it that has to go underneath this plastic painted housing. It does not go on top, so make sure it's underneath. Otherwise, it's not going to go back together correctly. And once that's under there, you can begin kind of pressing, and you'll hear maybe a few little snaps clicking in place. And now your bezel is back on. And now we can reinstall our two smaller screws right here. Don't forget to replace the push pin rivet once you've reset it like we have here. Basically, you just insert it in this hole right here. And to lock it, you just press down on that post and that will lock it in place. Like that. What we are going to do is we're going to set these little hooks hard to see with all this black. These two little hooks will go underneath these bars up here on top, and then we'll just press down until these click onto these other two bars. Okay, I can feel they're on those hooks now. Once I know they're on the hooks, now all I have to do is press hard here and it will click. There we go. Now it's on. And now we can still adjust the mirror by pressing. And now we're ready to reinstall our rear view mirror. So when reinstalling the mirror housing, this is the only wire you're going to have to deal with unless you have these Muth mirrors installed, so you can ignore this once again. And this basically is just going to click right into here. It'll only go in one way. You want to make sure you're holding on to the mirror housing up against your body and just simply click this in place. And now it's connected. Now I'm going to pull this little rubber boot up over the connector, and you can kind of shove this rubber boot with all the wires back inside of the shelter, kind of get it out of the way. Now to reinstall these bolts that hold this in, you want to make sure that you've got your body pressed up against the end of this mirror, so you kind of hold it in place. And then be very careful when you put these in, because you don't want these to drop down into that shelter housing. In fact, I've done this so many times and I have lost bolts down into the shelter, so it's not a bad idea to stuff a little cloth or something down there. I've just done it so many times. I'm pretty confident that I'm not going to do that. And I like to start with the top bolt first, but that's just my preference. And now it's in, it's not going anywhere. I'll get my second bolt. And that now your mirror is reinstalled. The only thing left to do is to reinstall your little plastic cover here that just snaps into place, and then replace that single 5mm socket bolt that goes to the underside of the mirror.